This is full disgrace and pretty much unprecedented as far as we can see. We were told Prince Andrew couldn't stop being a prince because he was a son of the late Queen.
There are moments in royal history when the story seems to be over, when a fall from grace appears complete, final, irreversible. And then suddenly, something happens that shifts everything. A detail emerges, a legal truth surfaces, or an unexpected loophole opens, creating a twist no one saw coming. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's story has felt like one long descent for years. Scandals, accusations, withdrawals, and humiliations piling one after another. But now, in an unexpected turn, after what many believed was the ultimate humiliation, Andrew has received a surprising and legally significant boost, one that could complicate the king's decisions, frustrate Parliament, and reignite a national debate over power, titles, and the limits of royal authority. And it all comes down to a simple fact. Legally, Andrew is still the Duke of York. Before we dive in, there's something I need to share with you. Over the past few days, thousands have watched these stories unfold, but most haven't subscribed. If you're one of them, I invite you now to join us. Subscribe to Crownverse so you never miss the next chapter in this unfolding royal history. The story begins with a paradox, one that sits at the very center of Andrew's turbulent fall. The public was led to believe that the king had removed Andrew's titles, including the Duke of York title, and even, according to some narratives, the style of prince. His Majesty removed Andrew's rights to the title of prince and to the style of Royal Highness, removed his listing as Duke of York from the roll of the peerage, and declared that the title would no longer be used in any official capacity. It even suggests that Andrew must surrender his lease and become known simply as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. But here is the crucial detail. All of this remains unverified. This statement, though presented with authority in the text, does not align with the legal reality. It is far more likely a dramatized or speculative representation than an official declaration. Because legally, strictly legally, Andrew remains the Duke of York. What emerged, according to a Commons research briefing reference, Andrew's removal from the roll of the peerage does not erase the peerage itself. It simply means the title cannot be used in official documents. The peerage still exists. The honor still exists. It remains attached to his name. Removing a peerage is not a simple matter of royal command, nor even the will of the monarch. It requires an act of parliament, a law, a process that cannot be executed overnight, or through a statement, or even by the king alone. This fact came into focus after questions were raised at Westminster, questions asked directly by Labour peer Viscount Stansgate. And the response was revealing. Baroness Anderson of Stoke-on-Trent, answering on behalf of the government, clarified that the government saw no need to legislate further. The measures announced, again, unverified, were deemed sufficient for the government's purposes. But her statement also acknowledged the truth embedded in centuries of British constitutional law. Andrew still holds the peerage. Removing it would require Parliament to pass an entirely new law. That alone is the shocking boot. Even as the palace symbolically distances him, even as headlines announce his erasure from the royal hierarchy, even as Andrew faces the consequences of his serious lapses of judgment, the law quietly protects his status. What makes this twist even more powerful and even more dramatic is that it comes at a moment when Andrew was believed to have lost everything. The narrative presented describes him as banished and made a commoner. These phrases are unverified, emotionally loaded, and legally inaccurate, but they reveal how the story is being framed in certain corners of the media, and yet the legal reality contradicts it. This is where the story becomes fascinating. It is not just about titles. It is about power. It is about symbolism versus law, about what a king can do by royal authority, and what he cannot. The monarchy is not absolute. It operates within frameworks, traditions, and centuries-old structures that even crisis cannot easily disrupt. And in Andrew's case, these structures have created an unexpected outcome. This legal nuance doesn't erase the shame surrounding Andrew's association with Jeffrey Epstein. It does not change the fact that he paid millions to settle the civil sexual assault case brought by Virginia Giuffre, though he continues to vehemently deny all allegations. It does not alter the moral, public, or reputational damage, but it does mean the story is not as final as it appeared. The scandal still casts a shadow across the royal family. The palace's hope, as the text says, was that the decisive actions taken would draw a line under the controversy. Remove the titles, remove the style, remove the privileges, remove the home. Move him to Sandringham as part of what it calls internal exile, a phrase often used symbolically rather than officially. But this legal twist means the line is not as clear as the palace may have intended. The disgraced former prince, once believed to have lost every remaining piece of his royal identity, still legally holds a peerage that cannot be erased without parliamentary intervention. This is the kind of contradiction that fuels political debates. And indeed, if Andrew cannot lose the Duke of York title without legislation, then legislation may become a battleground. Ministers have acknowledged that removing the peerage would require an act of Parliament. This means formal debates, readings, votes, amendments, public attention, and political cost. It would open a national conversation not just about Andrew, but about royal accountability, the limits of monarchy, and the precedents such an act might set. The symbolic removal of his title from the roll of the peerage and the stripping of official honors may feel decisive, but the legal survival of his peerage forces the institution to navigate a more complex terrain. It states he will move to the king's private Sandringham estate sometime in the new year, part of what it calls internal exile. This move remains unverified, but it aligns with earlier narratives that the king wishes to consolidate properties and limit Andrew's presence near the heart of royal activity. Sandringham is private, remote, and symbolically distant. It would be a quiet retreat for a man who once lived in the spotlight.
But it adds another layer of symbolism, the family dispersing, the old center falling apart. Andrew's relationship with the public is beyond repair. His denials have never convinced critics. His Newsnight interview remains a symbol of royal misjudgment. His settlement with Giuffre, though not an admission of guilt, is perceived by many as an attempt to avoid further scrutiny. And now, with the Metropolitan Police reportedly looking into claims that Andrew once passed Virginia Giuffre's date of birth and social security number to a bodyguard in 2011, the cloud continues to darken. These claims have not been proven and must be considered unverified, but the fact that the police are reviewing them means that Andrew's story is far from over. And yet, in the middle of all this, the law has given him a strange kind of victory, a technicality perhaps, a loophole, a constitutional safeguard. But in the public imagination, it is more. It is the idea that even in disgrace, even in exile, Andrew cannot be fully erased, that titles and identities forged by birth and tradition cannot be torn away without the machinery of Parliament, that a king's will has limits. This part of the story will not sit well with everyone. The public may question why an unverified statement about losing the prince title can circulate freely while the peerage itself remains intact. They may wonder why symbolic punishments are considered sufficient by the government, while the institution of monarchy continues to feel the weight of Andrew's scandal. They may ask why the law protects a royal disgraced royal, and whether the system should evolve. Meanwhile, Andrew himself faces a future carved out by decisions he can no longer influence. Legally still a duke, but symbolically stripped of dignity, still a prince by blood, yet removed by unverified claims from official styles. Still a royal, yet distant from the royal world he once inhabited. Symbolically, he is gone. Legally, he remains. The difference between those two truths is where the drama now lies. For the monarchy, the challenge is enormous. The palace must balance tradition with accountability, public perception with constitutional constraints, symbolic actions with legal realities. For Parliament, the question becomes whether they are willing to open the door to legislating titles, a precedent that would change the nature of aristocracy itself. For the public, the contrast between punishment and privilege may fuel frustration. And for Andrew himself, the story continues, not in the public arena, not with grand appearances or ceremonial roles, but in the quiet legal corners where identity is more stubborn than reputation. As he prepares, if the unverified reports prove accurate, to move to Sandringham, he will carry with him the weight of scandal, the humiliation of symbolic removal, and the unexpected survival of a title he was believed to have lost. His future is not the one he envisioned. It is quieter, smaller, and more constrained, but it is not entirely stripped away. A shadow of his former life remains, not in his public image, but in the legal language that the monarchy and Parliament must still navigate. In the end, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's story is now defined less by what has been taken from him and more by what could not be taken, not yet, and not without the full machinery of the British state. A twist no one expected, a boost he did not seek, and a reminder that even in disgrace, royal identity is not so easily erased.